I put it on speakerphone. I had someone watching me do it, and the lady answered, and she said, "Hello." I said, "Hey, this is Dan. First thing I want to tell you is that my mom loves me." She goes, "Huh?" I said, "My mom loves me, and my wife loves me, and my kids love me." She goes, "Okay." And I said, "But the reason I'm calling is I'm the one that's been putting."
And she's sitting over there going, "What the hell?"
Don't be mean to me.
Yeah,
my mom
exactly.
loves me. I know you maybe don't love me right
And
now.
everyone has a mom. Okay.
Yeah. She started laughing so hard. I got the appointment, but it also got me out of my funk, right? So you got to have fun, when you're doing this
make it.
hard work.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Next Life. Today's show is about the one thing every company and individual needs is sales. We're going to talk today about the science of it, how to do it, the processes, what works, what doesn't work, and why it's literally the lifeblood or the key to any organization's success or individual success. And if you don't believe it, try operating 1 month without it, or if it goes down, you can really see how important it is. That brings us to our guest today. He is one of the most talented individuals, not only in the one-on-one selling basis, but he's a superstar at building systems and processes and teams to train to sell. Dan started his career selling at an educational book company, door to door, which is the hardest kind of sales. He went on to found a company, him and his partner, in the legal service industry that they built up and sold. Along the way, he had stints building some sales teams for supplemental health industry. Currently, he's a manager at Consillo, actually the company that bought their company. He's a sales manager of a very large team there. Dan has a systematic, step-by-step approach that I think is one of the best kept secrets in the sales arena. And it works. He's had a lot of success, and I've seen it personally work. He also epitomizes what we're trying to do here at Next Life in the fact that he's actually in the arena doing it each and every day. And it's not theory, which is very important. Welcome, Dan Lehane. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I don't think I left
Thank you for the
anything
introduction, too. It made me feel good.
Yeah, well, that's my job. Pump everybody up. You don't believe me, ask. Yeah, so I think I didn't leave anything out, did I?
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so either. Yep.
Perfect. Well, I thought we would just sort of dive back straight into the bio of where you started. Let's start with the book selling days and how you found your way to that, because I think it's such a good training. I mean, I know it was hardcore.
Yeah.
You've told me some cool stories about it, but kind of how that got you into sales, and then was that a foundation for which I know it was to building something better?
Well, when I was a kid, I was raised by a medical oncologist. Was my father, PhD in medical oncology, and had a practice in cancer treatment. Mm-hmm. And so, I would go to work with him, Gary, sometimes. And one thing that I knew for sure is that I didn't want to be a doctor, right?
That was pretty obvious.
Yeah. And so I just didn't have the stomach for it. And then he had a good friend that lived in the neighborhood that was an attorney. And I went and worked with him for a couple of days and watched him, and basically learned that all he did was read. And so I decided at an early age, that's not
doctors out.
That's out. And so when I went to college at Texas Tech University, my major was accounting. I thought I was going to be an accountant because I was always pretty good at math. Mm-hmm. But after taking accounting 1 and 2 over the course of 6 different semesters, it took me a while to pass it, or pass it with a C. I realized that that probably wasn't going to be my your career path either.
Not your
so I got into marketing, right? I transferred into the marketing department of Texas Tech's business school. And I don't know, just one day I was thinking, if I want to get into marketing, I probably need to get some experience. Baseball players go to spring training to practice.
And this was in college, right? Yeah.
I'm in college.
Okay.
Knew for sure that I wasn't going to get a job based on my GPA because of the struggles with accounting and things like that.
I had a similar thing, but it's like, what do they do? Oh, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
That's
So
faster.
I knew that I had to build my resume to look attractive. And so I answered an ad in the paper. And the ad was, back when they had newspaper ads, the ad was earn college credit.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
Make $5,000 over the summer. Apply here. And so I went to the interview and I got the job. Turns out everybody that showed up that day got the job. But so, yeah, it was the Southwestern Company, a publishing company based in Nashville, Tennessee. And what they do is they take college kids and teach them how to sell originally Bibles. When I got to the company in 88, I think, or 86.
So similar encyclopedia, Bibles.
The encyclopedias are the what, who, when, and where. What we sold was the how. Okay. So how to dissect a paragraph or diagram of a paragraph, or how to do algebra problems or calculus.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was the how to do your homework. Yep, so sold it door to door.
And it was those experiences. I remember, didn't you tell me one you had to like figure out a place to live? Wasn't that part of the training?
Yeah, I didn't know that when I'd signed up. So we all drove out to Nashville. I think I was part of the Texas Tech group. There's probably 10 of us from Texas Tech that went. And so the first week, all you do is just learn scripts on the sales talk for the main product. And we practiced it. And then on, I think, Thursday evening, they told us where we were going to go. So my first summer, I was stationed in Danville, Kentucky. And so it was me and two other guys. And so when we got there, we had to find a place that we were going to stay, and realized that we were trying to create, because we could have stayed at a hotel, right? It would have been expensive, or a motel or a sleaze bag. But when someone that we were trying to sell these educational books to asked us where you live in, and we said, that fly-by-night Roach Motel down the road, it didn't give us a lot of credibility. So we wanted to live with a private family.
That was the good. You wanted that.
We wanted that.
That wasn't just a requirement or to look.
No,
be
it
a
helped.
star.
It helped. Well, it was all the programs. So they encouraged us to do that. So yeah, we just get into town.
Man, that's good training. You just go knock doors.
I don't think I've ever been more scared in my life than that first door I knocked on. So we had a little meeting. There was 3 of us, and we all divided up. Right.
Had you ever sold anything?
No.
Like that?
No, I didn't have any experience.
Okay. Perfect.
But I sold M&M, the candy for the Boy Scouts or whatever,
ball team or whatever.
But so and there was no cell phones back then, so we would say, "Hey, we're going to meet at noon at this restaurant to see how we're doing on finding a place to live." So I think we started at 8 in the morning. I knocked on this door, and the guy answered, and I looked at him and I said, "You're not going to believe what I'm fixing to ask you."
Was this your own script, I'm sure? Or was
I was so scared.
Yeah, you just
no. They
just
gave us a script for it, but anyway, yeah. That's how we would go place to place, and really, it was really not asking them for a place to live. It was basically what I've learned now is referrals. So we'd say, "Hey, Gary."
I'm living with your neighbor.
Well, we just say, "Hey, what I'd like to do is we're looking for a place to live." It's me and 2 other guys from Texas, and really what I'm trying to find is somewhere where I can call my mom and just tell her that I'm safe. And just wanted to find out if you might know someone who might know someone.
So many things at once.
Yeah,
tugs heartstrings and reciprocation.
But we never asked them directly, "Can we stay with you?" We'd say, "Who do you know that might know somebody who might know somebody that has an extra
good tactic
room and could use a little money?"
Yeah.
So every summer we found a cool family, and man, we got so close to them during the summers. And
how important do you think that? I mean, when you look back, all the success and different. Are those lessons still there? And do you think that was an influencer? And
yeah, I think so.
I gotta believe it is. Anybody's first sales.
I think the biggest education, and it just came to me. I haven't really thought about this much, but is that you're not going to die doing something that you don't. If you're scared of something, just do it anyway.
Well, that was my early sales was the same way. I would say, the self-talk that got me through was, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Exactly.
The worst thing that could happen, this guy could cuss me out, which has happened. And he could tell me I'm worthless. That's just happened. And say, get out of here. Or the best thing that could happen, I could sell whatever I was selling. I thought, that's not a bad trade-off.
Yeah.
But, it's not easy. It is not easy as people think it is. But repetition does.
It's not easy when you're thinking about it. Once you start doing it, it becomes easy.
Yeah, you just jump in and do it. You're right
Yeah.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
You just
It's
jump
that
in,
momentum.
So when you think about just sales, I mean, how do you define?
To me, sales is helping somebody get what they need.
Okay. Yeah, I would define it the same way.
Yeah.
Or transfer of feeling.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've always said, like, whatever we're selling, right? Whether it's legal services or insurance or whatever, when your prospect woke up that morning, they didn't think, man, I sure hope Dan Lehane comes by to solve all the problems that I'm having with this litigation support business. They didn't, right? They're solving their need now. We haven't created something new. We just have something that's better. And so, but they don't know it's better, right? And they certainly don't trust you. So you have to know going into it that they need you. You got to believe that first and foremost.
Yeah.
You got to believe that. If you don't think that you're better,
or know or believe your product.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I had a terrible experience selling health insurance. I sucked at it, and it was a whole lead-based deal where you had to close that day or week, and it was just a complete different. And when I look back on it, not to make myself any sort of excuses, but I didn't believe in it myself. I wouldn't have bought anything that way. So how successful are you going to be at that? In my case, not very. So I think
that conviction's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you got to like what you're going to say. And I wonder, and I would get your take on, why do you think there's so much negative feedback to when someone says you're a salesman or you're in sales? I mean, and it's still there. I mean, it's like it's not respectable, but it literally is. Every single thing you do in your life involves sales or persuasion. But it's got this negative connotation that just lives and breathes forever, I think.
You've heard that saying, everybody's heard the saying that if something, like if you experience something good, you'll share it with 4 people, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But if something bad happens to you, you'll share it to 10, 15, 20, nowadays, the world, social media. I think that's probably it. There's some bad salespeople out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be. It always is the used car guy. Or
they don't necessarily believe in the product. What they're trying to do is they believe in the fact that they need your money. And that's where the name sales got that stigma, is just the.
And what's ironic about it is my own experience, which I've told you before, is I had a blue collar job, and I was like, what do those guys do? And they were dressed well, and I was like, well, they're in sales. Well, I know but exactly what they do. And they explained to me, they went to truck shops and sold and did these things. And I said, well, do they make any money? Well, they make the most money here. So immediately I said, I want to do that. But for me, it was a quicker path too, because I had started night school, college, taking the basics, and was going to have to work and do that. And I'm like, this is going to take me forever. So, you immediately start doing that and you get pretty good at it. And I think that's a track I see over and over, even to transferring to business owners, that you have to be able to sell or motivate, or you can't. You can go to second base.
Yeah, unless you invent something that everybody has to have. If it's already invented and it's been around.
And if I hear whenever I hear an owner say, well, that's sales or that's in the marketing, I'm like, I told everyone in my company, that's all we do. All of us. Every second is an impression. So
yeah. No, but I think that's the biggest reason why it has that stigma, is just because there are bad people out there. There's crooks. There's crooks that will take advantage of.
And it's like you just said, if something good happens, you'll tell one. Something bad. Same with the restaurant. Why restaurants are so hard.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, there's a lot of reasons, but I mean, if you have bad food, I can't believe I had bad food, and you're going to tell 10 people. And so that's the one thing that probably resonates in everyone's mind, is the guy that was selling like I think buying a car is a little different now. You just put a deposit and hope you get a car sometimes. But it used to be. I mean, I read at one point it was like right up there with getting a tooth pulled.
Yeah.
And I'm going, man. And so you think about everyone having to buy a car at some point. They've all had that negative. So probably what you said, it just transfers through. Well, so talking about approach and what do you think makes a good approach? I mean, I know you have a systematic system that you wrote, but I mean, just as a general, I think of it as you have those 30 seconds of being on stage and you only have a very short period of time to capture, especially now. It's even harder now with attention spans.
The approach is the first sale.
What do you mean by that?
You have to, so if you take the whole cycle of selling, if you don't get that one, you don't get a yes there, you're dead.
If you don't get a yes to let me in the door,
let me sit down
talk.
and talk to you about it. So to me, the approach is the most important part of the process, right? Now, I also believe that pre-approach is very important to a successful approach. And what I mean by pre-approach
what do you mean by pre-approach? Because I want to dive into each of these because I think I said in the intro, your systematic approach, and we talked about this offline, that there's stigmatisms that, these pre-defined approaches don't work. They're all canned. That's not true. I seen your program work many times, and it works well, but it's systematically done too.
This is a science. It's not an art. This sales is not an art. It's a science.
And that's a misconception. Let me tell you, that's probably, what would you say? 90% of the people out there think that?
No, there's some very artful. I mean, there's some people that are very charismatic and very good looking and have it going on for them. But all they have is really just a small advantage. If they're not putting in the work, then they're not going to succeed.
And I saw that in the oil field. I saw there was some of the strategies would be hire really attractive women to go get in the door. And they did. But then it would many times, because there would only be a few of those that actually knew the product. And
it gives you an advantage. That's all.
But it would die. So the second phase of the sale would die. Okay, got in.
That's right.
But then they go, hey, you don't know anything. I'm going to call.
Then you're done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just one step. And obviously having those assets help. But, there's also people in the MLB that can throw 100 miles an hour, right? But that doesn't mean they're the best pitchers in the MLB. Right. So there's other pitchers that don't throw 100 that maybe make more or are more effective.
Sure.
So if whoever your favorite pitcher is could throw 100, I'm sure you wouldn't turn it down.
Right.
So I wish I was attractive and
it helps, but it's not.
But that's okay. I don't need that.
Yeah.
So the pre-approach is just finding out as much information about the person that you're going to call as possible
before you
call them.
Okay. So the research phase, call it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now you don't want to stalk. You don't want to tell them everything that you know about them because then it looks like you've stalked them, right? So I'm not going to say, hey, Gary, giving you a call. I noticed that you went to Harvard Law and graduated with this and that you were this and this and this. And they're like, damn, this guy.
Yeah.
Holy crap, what are you
PI on me or what? Yeah.
So knowing it and using it. But you know what it reminds me of, Gary? The approach is, and it's been a long time since I've ever done this, but asking a girl to dance. Right. So I remember in college and before I got married, 32 years I've been married to Jennifer. And, but let's just go
hard. That was hard asking.
Yeah. Let's go back to those
Crash
days.
and burn.
We're in the dance club or whatever you call it these days, right? The club, the whatever. And you're single and you notice that someone else that you're attracted to on the opposite side of the room is single, right? So the approach would be, do you want to dance, right? But if I just go up there and say, do you want to dance? That's a yes or no question, right? So my approach is not, maybe it's 50-50, right? I don't need 50-50.
And then you're done because it's a yes or no answer.
Then you're done.
Yeah.
And by the way, other people have seen it too. So you may be done with the whole table of girls there, right? Because if one says no,
good point. Linda said no, so I'm out too.
So I don't want to just walk up and ask someone to dance, right? I need to create a script,
right?
And so my script, and again, Jennifer, don't worry, I've not done this in 30 something years, but it's a great analogy, I think. Is if I'm going to go up and ask you to dance, I'm not just going to say, hey, would you like to dance? I want to answer any objections that they may have in advance.
In the approach.
In advance, before it comes up, right?
Okay.
So let's say I'd walk up and I'd say, hi, how are you? My name is Dan Lehane. What is your name? She'd say, Jennifer. I'd say, oh, great. It's nice to meet you. I'm curious. Do you like this song? Yeah. Because really,
You're building rapport.
the objections there's only really 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 objections that she might give me in this approach, right? One is, I don't like to dance. 2 is, I don't like this song. 3 is, I don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or
Right.
there's probably a couple of others, right? So if I could just get those out of the way first. So, hey,
The path opens up.
let me ask you, it's nice to meet you. Do you like this song? Oh my gosh, I love this song so much. Really?
Yeah.
Do you like to dance? Love it. Let's go dance. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my approach.
So many things happen in that. You're disarmed. You've said yes once already to something.
So if you don't believe in a script, that was a script, right? It's a
Right.
script I just wrote right now. I'm like, I'm not doing this today, but
Sure.
So that's what I do. I call someone and say, hey, how you doing? My name is Dan Lehane, and I'm in charge of your firm.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm calling is I wanted to meet you, and I'd like to do that sometime either this week or next week. Which one of those would be better for you?
Yeah, because then it's not yes or no
I
again.
never want to ask a yes or no question ever.
Right.
And I do that even with my kids, right? Do you want to take a bath first or do your homework?
Yeah. And what's so great about that is you don't even know that it's happening if you're comfortable, and which is the number one thing.
You know what's cool though is, and for those people that don't believe in scripts, everybody uses scripts. The movies, right? Who's your favorite actor in the world, right? He uses a script.
Sure.
It's
sure.
a script. Now he makes that script him.
Right.
He learns that script and practices that script, and you get good at that.
So
script.
yeah, I guess so. Each phase of this,
It's all scripted.
it's scripted and practiced, and it's okay. It's going this way. It's going that way. It's going. This
And the
way.
other thing, Gary, about having a script, and we can talk about this later because I'm kind of jumping ahead.
No,
but
it's okay.
the other thing about having a script is that now I have something that I can teach somebody else.
It's replicable.
Because I can't do it all, right? If I want to grow $1 billion company, there's no way I'm going to be able to sell it all myself. I mean, I don't think.
And it's so important. It's so important in the value driving in the audience we're talking
Yeah.
about here.
Yeah,
I mean,
when we start
there's
our
a process,
company-
a system for everything, and I can't tell you the times we've had companies we sold that, and it's a difficult conversation for the investment banker because it's like, well, Dan's fabulous. This guy could sell ice to Eskimos. And they're like,
Yeah,
well,
no.
Dan's going to be gone.
Yeah, when we started our company, when my partner and I started a company, we knew that we had to have process behind everything. Otherwise, if and when we sold it, that we'd have to stay, right? And so we put a process behind and a system behind every single function of the business, and sales happen to be one
Such a
of them.
value driver, and it's interesting because we'll see a lot of times systems, but not in the sales. That's probably believe it or not, the biggest deficiency area because many companies, it's a maverick entrepreneur who's generally good at sales and generally able to get a few people to follow him in the industry. Oh, well, he got all my accounts, and so I'm going to join him now. I see that a lot, but it's weird we don't see I just think it's such an opportunity too.
I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs too, and they say, "Man, if I could just get my salespeople to do their damn job,
Yep.
I've got to do it."
And but when you quiz them, Dan, they don't have they've not given them those tools.
They expect that salesperson to be able to go out and just use the art,
and
and it's
and some
not gonna happen.
can, but they
Some
don't
can,
do
but
it
it's
as
not
well
replicable.
for
Yeah.
sure. So
Yeah.
well, okay, so I think we're in your system here. We're approach, establish rapport,
Yeah.
And
so after I'm sitting down, right? So the approach is just making the appointment.
Okay.
Right? It's the first sale. It's making the appointment. So I'm approaching somebody to say, and that appointment's either going to be for right now, sometime next week, sometime next month. Every product and process and service is a little bit different, right? So in the selling books, it was now I'm here, and kind of like the health insurance that you were selling. Well, I'm here today. I want to sit down and show you these books now. That's not the case when I'm calling on attorneys, right? So they're in deposition all week. So I'm going to set up an appointment for either this week or next week or this month or next month or what have you. But yeah, so that's the approach. When I show up is the introduction, right? So here, this is why I'm here, right? I'm here and it has to be scripted, but this is why I came by today. And ultimately what I'm thinking inside my head, I'm not going to say this out loud, is I came here today so you would stop doing what you're doing and start using my service for it, right?
Yeah.
But just like in asking someone to dance, I can't just say that. I have to.
Well, and there's so much value, I think, and I used it, and you naturally when you're a salesperson by nature, you critique every salesperson that, and I've so many times people will call and they won't tell you what the hell they're calling about.
Yeah.
That used to annoy the hell out of me. I'd say, what are you calling me about? Especially when you're busy. And if they would, on their script, would be terrible because it would be so far from that that it's like, if you don't tell me that in the next 16 seconds or less, you're gone. So that saying it up front.
So in the introduction, we're creating what I call a buying atmosphere also. And I will say that I call it, I've read all this stuff. I've not invented any of this, right? I've read all this stuff. So I don't remember where I heard buying atmosphere, but I picked it up somewhere. But I'm creating a buying atmosphere. And so what I'm doing when I'm in the introduction is establishing rapport, creating a buying atmosphere. Essentially what I want, like someone's not going to buy from you if they don't like you.
Right.
Most often. So I want them to like me. And the best way to get somebody to like you is to have them talk about them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, so it's questions, and it could be any kind of type of question, right? Whether it's a picture on their desk, an animal on their wall.
And even that's tricky and more sophisticated. I've seen people be bad at that and good. Like I used to not put anything on my wall for that reason, because the sales guys would come in and they would immediately do I'll pick in the one thing on the wall. Oh, you're a pilot. Yeah. And you're kind of like, man, you got to be better than that.
Yeah. Well, you have to find something to talk about, right? So you could even just start off. If there's nothing on the wall, I'm going to probably say, are you from around here?
Yeah. Yeah.
You from around here? Or are you a transplant? And that can just start.
And a question makes them respond.
Yeah. So they're going to say, yes. Really? Great. What part of town did you grow up in? And they have to do the talking. It can't be me. And they say, well, I grew up in the Heights. Awesome. What'd you like about the Heights when you were growing up? What I see a lot of times with inefficient or young, inexperienced salespeople is they'll say, you from around here? Yep, I grew up in the Heights. Oh, really? I grew up near the Heights. Let me tell you about me now. Right?
True. And that's the sales rule I always tell my guys. Let me tell you, no one gives a crap about you at all.
That's right.
They only care about them.
So what did you like about the Heights? Where do you live now? Why did you leave the Heights?
Not I live in the Heights. I did this.
Yeah. They don't even care about you. You're there to listen to them. So that's the first thing, is that introduction is establishing rapport. But the creating the buying atmosphere is basically giving them an out, right? So I'll give you an example. So Gary, thanks for taking after I've established rapport, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. What I thought we'd do today is I'm just going to ask you a little bit about your practice. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. And if it makes sense, we can work together. If not, that's totally fine.
Gives them, relax.
So I'm not going to close you today.
Yeah.
I am going to close you today, but they don't.
We're not going there yet.
Yeah. So the buying atmosphere is letting them know it's okay to tell me no. So.
And I'm sure that works real well.
Yeah, they love
it.
The comfort. Like, oh, thanks. You can almost see them relax.
You can see their shoulders go down.
Yeah.
Because they're already like, hey, get out of here. What are you bothering me?
Yeah. So that's the approach in the introduction.
So then we're to what? That's buying atmosphere. So now you're to establishing the need.
Yeah. So establishing the need again is more questions.
And you're trying to, I guess, triangulate things.
Yeah, let's say I'm selling you a car, which I've never sold cars before. But if I were to sit down with you to sell you a car, I need to find out what's important to you. And the reason I need to find out what's important to you is because the only thing that's important to you, Gary, are things that you've struggled with in the past, right? So if let's say I was selling a car to someone maybe in their 20s, and maybe I'm selling it to a dad that has a daughter that's 17, 18 years old. What's important to you? So the important thing to him is going to be what scares him, or things that he's had problem with in the past or read about in the past.
And there's no way for you to know that until you ask those questions.
That's right. So what's important to you? Well, so number one is that it starts every day. I know when I was a teenager, that was the only thing that was important to me, is that it started when I turned the key, right?
Yeah,
I didn't care about brakes. I didn't care about airbags or anything like that, right? So if some guy came in and told me about how cool the airbags were, I'm not interested. But I'll know how to present my product to them based on what they tell me.
Sure.
That's important to them.
Triangulate. So that's what you're doing with the presentation, going, okay, go this way, stay away from that way.
Yeah.
Got it. And then I guess present.
So I don't know what you need until I ask those questions. That's establishing.
And then that's going to direct you to a close, I guess, or to.
Well, then I have to do my presentation, right?
Okay.
So the presentation is going to be me answering what's important to you. So let's just say it was quality. Well, Gary, if I told you that before we delivered the product back to you, we actually had a staff of engineers that tested the product and made sure that it hit every single one of those, how often do you think we'd deliver a product that was...
So you're painting a scenario.
I'm telling her about what we do, or him about what we do, to make sure that when we deliver to you, your thing that's important occurs, right? So if I told you this, how often do you think we'd get that? 100% of the time. You're right, we do. Now, let's talk about the next thing that's important to you. How do you think we'd do? You're right. So it sounds like we might be a good service for you to try, Gary. If I'm willing to make sure, and I hit every one of those things, I make sure that this happened, and this happened, would you be willing to give me a try?
And then what would you say to just a little role? So I'm not really ready to buy yet, Dan. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm not ready to buy just yet. Would you just, I would guess, go back to the same objections again?
Yeah. So I would never, I'm not going to ask that girl to dance until I know she's going to say yes.
Okay. So you're not even trying to close until every single objection has been.
Well, I have to keep asking these questions
because people won't tell you the objection. I know straight away. You have to pry it out of them.
Well, they tell you the objections in advance when you ask them what's important to them. Right. Now, you're right. There are some times where I may be calling on someone and they say, look, this is what's important to me. And I'll say, well, if you have problems with that in the past, and they'll go, yeah, we have. And I'm just like, oh, tell me about that. How'd that make you feel? What kind of bind did that put you in? Did you get in trouble with your boss? And so I'm really letting them relive that emotion of when it went wrong, right? And then I tell them why it wouldn't go wrong with me. And there are times where, I can't. I've got to use this one because it's my boss's cousin. Or, well, it's actually my brother. I have to use him. He'd kill me, right?
And then, boy, that's something you need. Otherwise, you'd spend 2 more hours there.
I'm not going to beat that. Yeah.
What
I would say at that time is, hey, in the event that
let me be your second or something. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Gosh, if something did happen to that person, I know you love me, he's your cousin, but if something did happen to him or his company, could I be a backup?
Yeah, I've used that successfully too.
Nobody minds putting you as a backup, and now it gives me something to follow up on.
Right.
Do you mind if I check in from time to time to see how I'm doing?
You still with your cousin? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I've used that one too.
Yeah.
Very successfully with that too. So you're to objection. You've answered all the objections. And then you feel like...
Hopefully. I mean, there may still be some objections that come up after I close, and I'll go back, like you said, and revisit. Okay, I totally understand how you feel, but help me understand what is it that's keeping you from using my service? Well, I just still don't feel comfortable about that. Okay, let me the feel felt found. I know exactly how you feel. In fact, Josh over there felt the exact same way you did until he found that we actually had this, and then talk about another feature or talk about a feature you've already talked about and drive it home. And when he told me that, it made a lot of sense.
Sure.
Would you agree with that?
Sure. And you want them to say yes.
Yes.
Totally
Perfect.
agree with that. And is there something to, these are just different things pop in my head of reading. Is there something to getting 3 yeses in a row? I've read some of that strategy. So I guess not only does you calm down, but getting the yeses, I guess, are important in a row.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to hear a bunch of yeses.
Yeah. Because you start going no. And so at that point, would you go in for a close and you say, okay.
Yeah, there's a buying line. So when we come in, we're below the buying line. So let's say that the buying line's right here.
And you just assume and know you're here coming in.
You're coming in below the buying line. Maybe not, but yeah, if you've made an appointment with someone, they didn't call you out of the blue. You're the one that called them, made the appointment.
Yeah.
You're starting off at best right at the buying line, but probably below the buying line. When you so what I always teach all of my salespeople to do is that the time to close is when you first get over the buying line.
So that could be quick, huh? Sometimes.
I've sold stuff before and never even talked about our features. And
Yeah, I think
benefits.
that's so good because I've done that and been on both sides of that too. And it's like I've seen salesmen talk their stuff out of.
Absolutely.
The guy says, "I want it." I want to just scream. Sometimes I've seen this happen, and you're going, just write the order and get up.
Yeah, I had a guy following me one time, get back in my car, and he goes, "I'm not sure if I fell asleep or what, but I may have missed your presentation." And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, why didn't you do the presentation?" I said, "Because he was ready to buy."
Yeah.
How did you know that? Because he was telling me.
He
Yes,
said,
yes,
"I got
yes.
it." Yeah.
So yeah,
I think a lot of people miss that.
No, 'cause-
Unbelievably, they
so
do.
it goes like this, and that's when you want to close. If you keep going, it's going to keep going up, but at some point, it's going to start coming back down, and then they'll be back below the buying line.
And that's generally too. A lot of times, you talked about young people making this mistake. It's people that talk too much. They're talking about themselves too much, and like you missed it.
Well,
They were ready. They said, "Give me the order."
Yeah, that's exactly right. The mind is a very reactive instrument, right? So, like if I say up, what's the first word you think of?
Yeah.
Down. Yeah, most people do. Well,
Sure.
I want you to think up. Why are you thinking down?
Yeah.
Right. So we can't talk too much because they're going to start thinking. They're reacting to what the words you were saying. The worst way you can communicate is by talking. So, right.
Sure, I agree.
The best way to communicate is have them talk. So when you hear yes, is when you close. Because if you keep talking, it's going to something's going to
it's
come up.
painful. I've worked with different people, and you see, and it's painful to watch when you're observing. You're going, "Oh my God, shut up," and just shut up. They don't care about you. They don't care. You're losing them by the second. And I do think maybe there's some. Do you think that can be taught? I mean, that ability, call it read the room, call it find the line.
I think it takes practice, though, Gary.
I do too.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
But what's cool is you can practice anywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Anywhere.
With anything.
Yep.
Kind of back to everyone sells.
Yeah, you can practice at the grocery store. You can practice at home. You can practice at a restaurant. Practice listening. You know who was really good at that was, probably still is, David Letterman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, host in general, good hosts are good listeners, and they ask just enough to pull something out, but not too much.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right. They just keep asking the right question, and then the person they're interviewing just talks.
And I've never understood why. And you see it wrong so many times. Well, you see it wrong, and you see them still being quote unquote successful. So, but you're like, you get so much more if you did it more systematically, I guess would be the word. So you've got down here solidifying a sell. What do you mean by that?
So,
So you've got to the yes. Okay, let's go, Dan. Let's do this.
and then emotion sets in. You're gone now. So, man, I really, this is what I do is really important. And I'm the customer now that I've just said I'll use you, or I've signed on the dotted line, or whatever. And now I start second guessing myself.
So you think that happens pretty quickly?
It happens
Almost.
It's called cognitive dissonance, I think, is the actual technical term for it. So, but our brains we're emotional. We're emotional beings.
Because they're
right?
going, wow, should I have done that or not?
I know that the service I'm using now is not great, but it's getting it done. And if I send this really important deal to this guy, what if it's worse?
Right.
And I lose my job because I made a terrible decision. So to solidify the sale, what you need to do is walk them through that emotion that we know they're going to, we know they're going to go through it. It may be today, it may be tomorrow, it may be next week, but we have to walk them through that so they know that it's normal. So let's say that it's a service and they use that service maybe once every month or so. What I want to do is he or she's committed to using me now on the next project. I'm going to say, well, Gary, it was a pleasure meeting you today. And hey, I just want you to know that when you do call me on that XYZ project, it's going to be a rush probably. And your boss is going to come here and say, hey, and maybe even be really strict and stern with you and say, this one, we got to get, this is really important. And you're going to pick up that phone like you normally would to call the person you're using now. And you're going to say, wait, I told Dan that I would use him on this project. And that emotion is going to set in where it's going to feel like, well, maybe I'll use Dan on the next one. And you know what? I don't want that to happen. So I want you to know that you will experience that, and that's okay. But when
you're even talking
that's
directly
solidifying
about
the sale.
Yeah. You're directly saying, hey, when you leave here, don't worry. It's good.
Yeah. So
that's interesting because that's something I don't see a lot of people do at all.
That's called solidifying the sale. Yeah, that
Yeah.
keeps your cancellations down.
Yeah, because usually you just hear them jump to the referral piece.
Yeah, so this would be right after the referral piece.
Okay, so you would get the referral first.
Well, I don't know. Either way.
Either way, whatever.
I want to make sure that the sale's solidified. So, but the most important thing is going to be getting referrals.
And people are real hesitant, and I find that even more so, I think, now. Because I think it's the attention. No one wants to prostitute a friendship, call it, or something. Yeah, I don't want to send Dan over there. Yeah, this guy may not be ready. I'll get back to you, Dan, on some referrals.
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
It's again, it's all in the way that we have a process. I have a process behind asking for referrals. So I know my objections, right? I already know what's going to happen. They're going to say, I don't feel comfortable. Or they're going to give me people that they don't really know that well.
Yeah,
right?
That's another tactic.
Yeah.
I talk to this guy. He don't have any money. I
So
don't
the
use my friend.
way that I like to ask for referrals is I tell for referrals, right? I'm telling for referrals. And so I'd say something like this.
Explain that, yeah.
I'd say, okay, Gary, one thing about my company is we don't really do a whole lot of advertising. Like you're not going to see us on the Super Bowl commercial.
Okay.
In fact, we don't advertise at all. And the only way that anybody would ever know about my service is by me telling them about it. And I know it'd be impossible for you to know which one of your business connections could or could not use my service. So I don't really want you to ask that question. What I'd like to do is, who do you know that would meet with me just because they know you? And
that's a disarming way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if they use me or not. I just want to meet cool people that are like you that would meet me only because I know you. And then I'll figure out whether or not I can do my research later. I just need to get people that they know that will meet with me because I know them, right? So, and you can give me 10, 15 names. I had somebody do this to me one time, and ever since he did this to me, I've implemented it into my process. But he actually went on LinkedIn and found out who I was connected with.
Okay.
And he actually printed out a list of names. And when he
had them coming in.
He had them on a piece of paper.
Man, that is an interesting.
And he said, Dan, I'm curious, how do you know Gary Warwick? Oh, we're good friends, really. Do you think you could introduce me to him? Be happy to.
And man, that puts you on the spot to.
Yeah, so I do that a lot now.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, it is good. I see you working with so-and-so over here. And then you didn't do it initially.
Yeah.
So they didn't get all freaked out. Because he's walking in here you already have rapport.
So this happened to me. This is a guy that was selling me. And I was like, whew, that's good. When he left, I was like, that's really good. I need to start doing that.
I know I had a friend that he yearns for the NetJet, and he actually can afford it. But so he calls me and he's like, hey, you want to go out look at the net jets. I'm like, I'm not going to buy anything, but I love to sit in airplanes. So we go through the whole net jet spill at Hobby, sitting in the jets. And of course, pretty quickly they figure out we're there for the hats and the pins. And the guy can afford it, but he's just, he grew up like he made his own money, and he can't get his head around it. So after the fact, and I told the guy after the fact, he called me. The jet sales guy called, and I said, listen, I appreciate you calling. I appreciate the time and the champagne I drank out there, and I'm a pilot, and I know the charter cost. I said, I know it all. I just don't want you to waste your time on me. I've sold my whole, very, very understandable, Gary. Yeah. He goes, what about special occasion? Everybody has one occasion, your grandkids or I'm like, man, that's pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a jet card. And so I kind of deflate that. But then he takes another tactic that I thought was great. He goes, well, you guys both are self-made, one thing I know about you is you always get anything you decide you want. And I said, so, I mean, he goes down there and I'm thinking, and I told him, I said, man, I'm not ready to do anything, but that is good.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I said, that's good. And I said, I bet you sell a lot of jet time. He goes, I do. Okay. But it's funny if you're in sales as we are, and you are, if you're in business, you're in sales, then you critique it. But I also find myself being too easy sometimes too, because we've all had that. Like I taught my son-in-law to use the, I'm just married, poor, broke, please. And that works, but and if a kid knocks on my door, he gets an order.
Yeah, same here.
I mean, I don't care what he's selling. If he had the guts to knock on the door, he gets an order.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to disparage anybody. I have a lot of roofers knock on my door a lot.
Oh, no, that's not kids usually.
No, this one was yesterday.
Oh, okay.
I think it was yesterday.
I'm talking to like in junior high.
Oh, no, this guy was 20s. Yeah. I call them kids now.
Yeah. Well, that's true because we're old.
Yeah.
Yeah, those roofer guys do that a lot. Yeah, so how did that, since that is your expertise bar none, how do you, when someone pitches you, are you learning? Are you easy or are you hard? Or
I'm the easiest one. I'm a sucker. Yeah, my wife won't let me answer the door.
Yeah, I get the same thing at my house.
Because the ones that suck, I just feel so sorry for them. I want to bring them in and teach them. And the ones that are great, I just appreciate so much.
I've done that before too. Yeah. I brought, I said, listen, that was, I'm going to buy it, but that was terrible.
Yeah.
So why don't you try this?
Yeah.
So it's funny. Salesman loves a salesman.
Oh, for sure. They appreciate it. And just the guts it takes to go out there and knock on that door. You've already kind of won my admiration.
Or like some of my early books and things I loved was Zig Ziglar. And one of them, I remember his stories was, he said when he was trying to overcome that and he was sucking, he goes, I had this amazing ability to drive by a house and look in there and know they didn't need anything. And I always thought about that when I needed that courage was that statement.
Yeah.
Because he talked about how much money he lost by having that attitude. And then he said at that time, driving to the post, I got to go to the post. There might be another order, which is the whole thing of it's activity, not accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's what I told sales guys that work for me. I didn't want professional visitors.
Yeah.
I said, if we could get visitors for cheap, if you're just visiting, hey, how's it going, Dan? It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to close.
Yeah.
So that call avoidance or call reluctance is a real thing. And it's whether it could be on a phone or just knocking on a door.
It's a real thing, even when you're older, when you're good, when you've had all the scars we've had.
Yeah.
But I think you picked on it perfectly. It's just do it. You can't be thinking about it.
Yeah, it'll make you sick to your stomach thinking about it.
You're like, what if they say this? What if they just call them and see?
Yeah. I always like to start like if I'm just cold calling, out calling on businesses or what have you, I like to start a time that I'm going to have my first approach and just hold myself accountable.
So you mean like a stopwatch sort of deal? I'm here 10 minutes.
Like I'll take my calendar for the week and let's say I have nothing planned. I'll go ahead and schedule my first appointment. Right, at this building on this floor. I may not even know who's there, but I put it in my calendar. And so when I wake up in the morning, I look at my calendar and say, I've got an appointment at 8 a.m.
And you hadn't made an appointment.
I didn't know anybody there. Yeah.
Okay. But that's the building you're going to be at.
But I felt like just psychologically, if I don't have that there, then I'll avoid that call, that first call forever.
Well, and it's, you and I both know, I mean, any salesperson that's any good has a really good work ethic. That I think is some of the misconception out there. You see this, oh, you don't do anything. You work as hard as the other guy. But if you're going to be truly successful, and I know you're putting in a lot of hours, a lot of time, because if you're not busy, you're busy trying to get busy.
I love that.
I mean, that's a business owner or sales. So, well, so back to the sort of pitch world. I mean, why do you think that the people are? I guess it's back to the same scenario. They don't believe in scripted approaches because there's so many bad ones. I guess
I don't know. I don't know why, but I do know that if you don't believe in it, that when you sell your company, you're going to be stuck there, right? Because, and the other thing that I want to just touch on here, Gary, is that you can write the script, right? Or have somebody write it for you. When we wrote our scripts, I interviewed.
and it transfers to different industries. It's the same principles, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I interviewed a technical writer just to follow me around.
Okay.
Right.
Did you? Okay. That's a good approach.
Yeah, just follow me around. Let me tell you what, and then
So they're
write it.
documenting your sales process. And
Yeah. And yeah, so that helped. I did that with all the processes in my company, but specifically the sales
good
process. And was it good the first time she brought it back to me? Nope. It wasn't. I had to say no.
Right.
But then we all had a script and if you write a script or have someone write a script for you, guess who needs to memorize it first?
yourself?
Yep.
Yeah.
You've got to use
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So if I go out and let's say I'm training a new salesperson and he makes like 4 or 5 appointments and I'm going to go with him and show him how I do it, right? The master. I can sell anything because I know my business better than anybody and I know the competitors better than anybody because this is my business.
Right.
He doesn't know that yet. So he doesn't have experience. So experience can be, that gap can be shortened through training.
With the process.
With
Yeah.
training, yeah. So if I go out in his territory or in my territory and we go sit down with the prospect and I don't use what he just learned, I use my curveballs, my spitballs, really fancy closes and
Then
stuff
he
like
does,
that.
yeah.
He'll never think he can do it.
That's a good point. So you're staying basic script even when you
Word
know
for
you,
word.
even though when you know you have a
I'll walk away from the
slider
sale.
over here
Yep.
that you're.
I'll walk away from a sale if I can prove to.
Interesting.
Now, it's a good process, so it's not going to not work,
Right.
right? So I can remember one time I was had a guy following me in his territory, and when we left, he's like, "That was absolutely amazing." I said, "Really? What'd you like most about it?" And I just pulled out the script. And I said,
just right there.
"Read that." That's what you said. I know.
I wrote it, and
Yeah.
and now I need you to learn to memorize it like I
Yeah,
did.
exactly. It's I'm a big believer in that because then they get confidence, and then
Well, I was so thankful my son-in-law got to go through your
Yeah.
training because I told him when he did it, I said, I don't care if you sell any insurance, honestly, but I want you to go do this. And he still uses it.
the process.
And it's a completely different industry and all of that. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. Well, what do you think, like timeless things that sort of transfer on a broad scale? I mean, I know you have a very detailed, I know, for example, my own training modeling with Tony Robbins and silence. We've all used silence very effectively. I mean, do you think there's some broad things that
I
sort
think
of work?
yeah.
Because you've got like in there in your answers, because we talked to some of these questions. You had 4 T's.
Yeah. I want to get to that. But before I jump in that, the first thing that popped in my head was I read a book by Fernando Fornes. It's called Coaching for Improved Work Performance. Read a long time ago. I've told you about this many times. But,
I do remember you talking about this.
But
book.
it's a book on management, right? And I was a great salesperson at my first job. Did so well, they promoted me to manager, right? I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But anyway, I read this book, and the concept is the same as sales. It's thought transmission. Earlier, I'd mentioned that our minds are very, very reactive instruments. I say up, you think down. If I say right, you think either wrong or left, right? So if I say a color, you're going to think something different, which is crazy. So he talks about that. This is where I got all this stuff. I said, I can use this in sales, right? So I think that's probably the biggest thing that transformed my ability to train people was to get them to use thought transmission to get their point across.
And get them to buy in, because I got to be honest, when we first met, however many years ago in EO, and I was a subscriber to not believe in the process, honestly, because I had done okay winging it, being a good old boy. But when I would watch you go through that and the manual and all the different stories, and I'm like, it absolutely works. And it does so many good things. I mean, it can take teams that, because you're going to have superstars that could probably stumble along and get it just because they're good. But that's not a process. That's not right. A team. That's not a way to sell your company.
If I'm going to a life-saving surgery, I don't want a doctor that's winging it.
Yeah.
Right? I want the guy that's practiced it and has a script. He knows what he's doing. But yeah, so I think thought transmission is something that's
it's
very
like the
unique.
whole psychology of it. I mean, pretty recently, within the last 10 years, I'm a big disciple of Charlie Munger. He just died. He was Buffett's, and he has these 25 psychological rules that rule the world. And they are just so good. And he sort of found them himself. And when you really, like, I just was a disciple of it. I said, oh my God, this is the ticket. And so I've learned them all. And now you just see them play over and over. When I look at an ad, I go, oh, well, that's reciprocity. And I think it's probably the same with what, I mean, I'm sure you look at any marketing approach through your own lens of it's like, oh, I know what they're doing there.
Yeah.
And it's funny how much it's actually being done to us, or not done to us is not the right word, but those techniques are being used in like social media would do a whole, there's all kind of psychological things there that make you click and look. And
that's where I do all my shopping now.
It's horrible.
Where'd you get that belt? Huh?
It's like Amazon just shows
Facebook.
up. Just shows up all the well, Facebook's marketing, you know what it is, still works. I bought a shirt the other day, and Tiffany's like, well, where'd that? Yeah, it worked. I liked the shirt. It came through, and it had a cool little emblem, and I bought it.
I want to talk to you about the 4 T's. Though,
let's talk about that. It is really
cool, and I use this 4 T's in managing salespeople.
Okay.
So if you'll follow this system, you'll always be successful in sales. All right. So and
this is an individual or a team.
It's an individual. Yeah.
Okay.
It's each individual as a team, but it's an individual. So first of all, to be successful in sales, you have to have a territory. That's the first T, right? You can't stick somebody in
broad, sell the world.
Right. If there's no customers in that territory, then they can't be successful. That one's an easy one, right? I'm going to give you a territory that, as a business owner, I'm going to make sure that you have a territory that
has qualified customers.
So that's territory. Now you could also have a discussion on how to work that territory. So that could still be part of the first T. Like, I don't want you to just see the easy ones in the whole territory and say, I'm out of territory, give me more, right? So I got to work it tight and get in and see even the hard to get prospects first. So that's the first T. The second is time management. And the only reason why I call it time management is because it starts with a T, but it's really activity, right? And so whatever that number is, it could be 10 a week, it could be 10 a day, phone calls or in-person visits or however you need to divide it up. But you need to have a standard of what the standard is for how many people you need to see to be successful on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? So the most important thing at this point is make sure that you develop that time management muscle or the activity muscle to where you're comfortable seeing those. Maybe it's 4 a day, maybe it's 10 a day. I don't know what that is. In my business, the legal services, it was 6 a day.
And when you're putting a team together, are you setting that parameters?
Well, I have the
usually?
experience. I know.
So you're going to say, look, you could get this many in. You can't.
Yeah. I'm not going to give you something that's impossible, right? So that's activity, and that's all I'm managing at first. I don't care what you say to them, how you say it, if you're doing it right, if they're the wrong people. Just I want you to get comfortable seeing 10 people or whatever that number is. Then once they're there, now it's make sure that we're seeing the right people, right? So I call that targeting. Right. So that's the third T is targeting. So now a lot of times it's harder to see the right people. So what you'll see in a young salesperson is they have their activity at standard, and whenever you start coaching them on targeting, the activity tends
They're
to go
blurting
down.
it all out to the receptionist and never getting to the right
Exactly.
person.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
saying it to the wrong people. I don't care at first, but I do need to make sure that they get good at targeting, right? But also keep their activity up.
Right.
Because it's going to go down at first, but we got to keep it up.
Right.
So they're used to, they got that muscle worked into where they can do that. So now let's start seeing the right people, and we're coaching them all through there. Now, if you have a good territory and you are seeing the right number of people and you're seeing the right people, if you're not successful, it's your technique. And that's the fourth T. You're doing something wrong with your technique for sure, because we know that.
Because you've already used it.
Yeah,
You know it works.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I just need to go out and follow you. We'll role play and identify
So
where
you do a lot of that role playing. Yeah.
role playing, and then actually going out and watching
That's
them
even
do it.
better.
It's
I bet.
better. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're training someone, do you step in when you see them
I don't. I'll
crash?
let 'em
You let
fail.
them just crash and burn, and
Depending, I mean, if it's $1 million order, I'm going to step in. But if it's just we
yeah,
could live
one
without
off.
it, yeah.
And then you leave and say,
I'd
"This is
rather
what
see
you
them
did
fail,
wrong."
and then we can teach. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's hard though, especially
Oh,
as a
I
young
bet.
manager. It's hard to walk
Oh,
away.
it's just like
Yeah.
you talking about the curveball and the. It is very hard. And then I've noticed just myself as I got, maybe it was older, more confident, whatever. You worked with salespeople, and I didn't have a good systematic approach. I just would work with them, but I would find myself wanting just to scream sometimes. Go, just skip this part, get me to the person, because you know the steps. And it's a situation where I wished I would have had a systematic, because I had pretty good guys and I would pick off the good ones. As we grew the company, I would say, I want this guy and I don't want that guy. Again, I could pick them off once we got the private equity money. Before that, I couldn't pick them off because they didn't. They were like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to come." But it was funny. Then once we sold and got into the corporate mentality, I remember they had a guy they wanted to send me, and he was like, "Well, he wants to transfer in, but it's your decision." So I go and interview the guy, and he was horrible, man. He was been there forever, professional visitor, and and we had the compensation set where you could really make some money. And I remember calling back, I don't want him. I want him. They're like, well, he's been with the company. And I was like, well, he sucks. You want me to get a bunch of visitors down here? We'll get 4 visitors for $75,000 a year.
Yeah.
But we'll have no business.
Yeah.
we can get these guys that are willing to bet on themselves and make high commissions and a low basis. And this guy wants a big base and no commit. So it's funny how you can, and that's kind of rolling into, I mean, we'll skip around a bit, but like
one thing that you just reminded me of that I'll just chime in is momentum, right? So I never, ever, ever want to end my day on a sale.
Really?
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because the best chance, my confidence is high, right? If I have somebody say yes to me, I feel good about myself, and I'm the best time for me to pitch somebody is right now.
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah.
So, and now sometimes you can't help it, right? But especially in the door to door, there's just another door. You keep going until someone tells you no, and then you go home. And so
you're saying I got a hot hand I'm playing.
got a hot hand. Never
But
leave the table on a heater.
that is so spot on, Dan, because I
Yeah.
can't tell you the number of times when things were going
let's go
well,
celebrate. I just made a sale.
or when things are going well, it seems effortlessly.
It's effortless.
And then when you need it,
it's impossible.
even when you know what you're doing.
I want to tell you a funny story. When I was selling books door to door as a college kid, I had made a lot of sales in a row, maybe 6 or 7 in a row, which is unusual to have that. But I was on fire.
Right.
Everything I
Just
said,
could
people
say-
were buying, and everybody knew everybody that was buying from me. And so I was cocky. And so I went up and knocked on the door, and this young lady answered the door. She said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "I've got one question for you." She goes, "What's that?" I said, "Would you like to go get your checkbook, or would you like to see what you're fixing to buy?" And she slammed the door on my face, so I got to go home.
Yeah, there you go. That's one way to go home.
That's right. You got to get a no.
Got to get a no. Yeah. So you get a no because the work ethic will be there in the morning. Is that the
Well, no, it's just
because that hot hand.
I'm never going to finish. It's like riding a wave.
It's like you shot the last shot and you
keep
finally
shooting.
missed, and so it's
Yeah.
time to
Okay.
stop.
Now let someone else shoot.
But keep going.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But, yeah, feed the hot hand.
And that's so weird how it's like some kind of subconscious. And then vice versa, when I've needed
When
it.
it's off, it's off. Yeah.
And when I've needed it badly, and even when I had my own company and I knew what I was doing, it just seemed like you couldn't buy an order.
Yeah.
Just, oh my God, it was horrible.
Yeah.
You know?
But I can just remember making sales as a young salesperson and just being so excited. And I'd go reward myself with a nice lunch, which made me tired. And yeah,
I used to do stuff like that too. I would book first class sometimes on the plane, which was an extravagance I didn't need to do. But it isn't even when I owned it. And I said, well, that costs $1,500 for that upgrade. So I've got to get $2,500.
Yeah.
And I would use that as a reward, pressure, stuff like that. All that works. Yeah, that rolls into like goal setting and all that. I mean, to me, that's just unprecedented part of it. If you can do that, then you can transfer to sales or back and forth.
Yeah, I'm working with my team right now. It's the beginning of the year, so we're working on our goals right now.
Zig Ziglar, who was a big influencer for me, I remember him saying, well, people would say, well, Zig, you just think you can do everything with positive mental attitude and goals. He's like, no, but I can do everything better.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I can do it all, but I can do it all better.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember that.
So yeah, we in fact yesterday during our sales meeting, I talked about our goals and how to do that and how to approach your goals and how to use it. And one of the things that we ended the meeting on is before we even talk about what our goals are, we need to understand what our purpose is, right? So I said we got to start with why, because you can tell me, hey Dan, I want to make $1 million a year as a salesperson. And I'll show you how to do that. But you got to understand that, I mean, you got to really want that because this ain't going to be easy.
Yeah.
Right.
What are you willing to give for that too?
Yeah. So let's work it backwards. So understanding your purpose or why you're doing this that will motivate you through this is probably the most important.
And I think companies, that's probably the biggest, when you think about, and one of the questions I have is how does a company think about starting that? To me, it all starts with that, working backwards, like you said.
That's right.
Where do you want to get to? And then that'll tell you how many salespeople you actually need or don't need. And,
That's the science in it or the math.
And that math absolutely works. I mean, I've done that for years myself.
Yeah.
So when you think about someone being good at sales, you think it can be taught?
I know it can be taught.
Even to people that... let me say it this way. If I brought you a shy, introverted, do you think you could teach him to sell?
Absolutely. I think it'd be better.
Really?
Because people don't want to buy from salespeople. People want to buy from people.
Yeah.
Right? So people they know and trust. So
what would you define kind of to be good at it? I mean...
I think the ability to listen, but listening is one thing, right? It's kind of a cliche. We have one mouth, two ears, but being able to process what you hear and solve for that what you're hearing. So what's important to me is this. And you've got to be able to say, okay, why is that important to you? Or you can ask, why is it important to you?
Back to listening, huh?
Yeah, it's really all about listening.
But listening and comprehending.
Yeah, and processing.
Not just, oh, he said that.
Exactly.
God, that's so true because the people that I've seen do it well, they're good listeners. And there's so many that don't. There's so many that just keep talking about themselves or the product, and they've missed completely.
Well, I always tell my salespeople, if you leave a meeting and you feel like it went just unbelievably well, you did all the talking.
True.
Right? Because we always feel good when we're talking. If you leave and you're like, man, I don't know. They did all the talking, and guess how they feel? They feel like it went really well because they did all the talking. So we want them to talk.
Man, there's two good things happen there. And then you've also uncovered the objections. Because like you said, if you've done all the talking, you don't know what they're thinking.
Exactly.
You have no idea what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And people do. I mean, I drilled that into my guys is no one gives a crap about you. They just don't. So don't stop.
Yeah.
You know,
the ones that do, the ones that are really good, they probably don't have any business. You're like, man, I just wasted a lot of time this lady was listening to me, and she's not even a buyer, most likely.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we need to be listening and processing what they're saying and remembering what they're saying. Right. I remember one of my very first customers with my company. She was a huge LA Dodgers fan. My company was started in Dallas, Texas. Right. So, and back then I didn't really follow baseball at all, but in Dallas they have the Texas Rangers. And so the Texas Rangers are in the American League, and the Dodgers are in the National League. And back then, they never played each other unless it was the World Series, right?
That. Yeah.
So she told me she was a big Dodgers fan, and I came back to the office, and I called the Texas Rangers, and I said, I want the best 2 seats that you have when the Dodgers come to town. And the sales guy's like laughing. It's like, I said, what's so funny? And he goes, they don't come to town. Oh, I didn't know that. So I got educated. But years later, Gary, maybe 5-6 years later, they started doing the interleague play. And I showed up with tickets to her
because
office.
You remembered
I remembered it.
Nice.
Yeah, I had it in my notes. So I came up and she was like, I don't know if you knew this, but I'm the biggest Dodgers fan in the world. I said, I did know that because you told me 7 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, I've done that myself too, very successfully, because if you just, and it can be the littlest thing, and that's even better when it was the littlest thing.
Yeah.
Because they're like, holy cow, he was listening.
That's right.
He was listening. He remembered that. Because I would keep detailed notes, and I would do the same thing. Well, I remember your sister died. I was like, oh, what? I don't even know you. How the hell did you? Well, you told me.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. That's transcends all of it. Well, what about, I mean, as far as like books and tools and beyond your own system, which is fantastic, what do you think influenced you back? I mean, for me, I was huge Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins. And I mean, I know once you're kind of a student of this, I think you always are, because I know I still
read a lot.
Yeah.
I probably read 2 books a month still.
And which ones would you just hold? Well, you talked about the one.
That's my go-to, right? But so I like the Gladwell books. Who's the guy that kind of going blank? Who's the guy that wrote? It'll come back to me in a second. Stenik, is it? Simon Sinek. Yeah, Simon Sinek's. It's so one of my favorite, because we're going to edit that part. One of my favorite authors is Simon Sinek.
I've not read him.
Oh, he talks about, a lot of it's about purpose and start with why, right? It's great stuff. But early on, I was a big Zig Ziglar fan as well. And then Brian Tracy.
Yeah, Brian Tracy was good too.
Was a really good one for me. Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie.
Think and Grow Rich. I still read that
and
today.
Mandingo, what was the guy's?
Mandino.
And it was a corny title, but it was
the greatest salesman in the world.
It was such a good book, though.
Yeah.
It's funny how that stuff will be timeless, too.
Yeah. It's a good one. The greatest salesman in the world, and Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich was huge for me.
Napoleon Hill.
Hill. Yeah, he's who I think Ziegler found his way to, was Napoleon Hill. But you're right. Think and Grow Rich is, how old is that book? That book is freaking really old.
It's very old.
But when you read it, they're talking about Carnegie, Still, but the principles are the same.
Exactly. Isn't that
go,
crazy?
holy cow, this thing's 100 years old, and it's still relevant. You know.
So I read that kind of stuff a lot. And then I read a lot of, since I'm leading salespeople, teaching, so I read a lot of leadership books. So all the Navy SEAL books that are out.
That's probably good stuff.
Amazing. General McKesson has a book on leadership. It's phenomenal.
I read a SEAL book. I'm trying to remember. I just remember the first paragraph, and it was so good because it was talking about planning. It was like, if you find yourself in a fair fight, you didn't plan very well.
That's awesome.
Because their motto is kill 100 to 1 or something. Like, and if there's 12 of us, we can kill 120.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way they think about it. I thought that is so good.
I think those are my favorite ones that I can think of. But yeah, I go back to the old ones. I read a book recently, and at the end of the book, it recommended, hey, go back and read some of the books that you've read 10 years ago.
Yeah.
and take and read it now, and the lens is so different. that
Yeah.
you'll pick up.
Very much so.
Yeah. So I've
Well,
taken
one,
that.
we're older, but lots more scars, lots more.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're obviously so good at it. I mean, what do you think got you there? If you,
Well, I was talking to someone that I'm managing right now, a brand new guy. He's not been in sales before. And I told him one of the greatest things about sales is that you can go out and mess up and no one even knows. Right?
it's true.
Like if you think of the other departments in your
You
company.
couldn't do that with your dad being a
Right.
doctor.
or even like if you're like, let's say with your old business, the production engine, if they screwed up, everybody knew about it.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody did. In accounting, if they screwed up a receivable or a payable
This
or
is
something
true.
like that, everybody knew about that. Sales guy can go out and screw up all day and no one knows. So to me, the sales position is very similar to like a batting average. I mean, you fail a lot more than you succeed, right? So you just have to know that you go out and fail a lot.
Yeah, and be comfortable with. That's the other thing you have to. I love one of the reasons I love it is so black and white. I mean, you go. You know the game is on. There's nowhere to hide. You either won or you lost.
Yeah.
That day, that hour, that minute, and there's not a lot. And if you win, you can win big, and you can win a lot. It's like traits. It's interesting. One of the traits I tried to think about the people that worked for me, and you thought about like what is a trait that sort of seeing a lot of, and interestingly enough, it's gambling. For me, I had guys that like to gamble, and they were better salespeople if you gambled a little bit,
That's
which I
interesting.
guess probably makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
because you're willing to,
they believe that someone can make a decision right now.
yeah,
gamblers are
and
like-
they're willing to put their skills
Exactly.
on
No,
the
that's
test.
true. Yeah.
And you don't know what you're going to make next week.
Yeah.
I mean, you do if you're successful, but if you're not, you're not going to make anything. You know, and a lot of people don't want to buy into that. But that's the same thing owning a business. That's what people don't really realize. That's why the sales are transcendable. They have to be. If you don't sell anything, you don't have a business.
Nope.
And
Unless
you're
you work-
betting-
unless you work for the government.
Yeah, government. Yeah, or some of the big corporations. I think you can hide.
Exactly.
I've seen that kind of at work going, what do all you people do? It's a
Yeah.
whole building full of people. I don't think anyone does anything.
Crazy, isn't it?
Oh, I'm never going to understand it. And what we see now, it's crazy. We see companies get bought and then they screw them up. It's just like clockwork. And you sort of go, why? And then the people that sell them, I had an owner call me the other day and he goes, I need to talk to you because they got me planning the Christmas party and we need to be hiring divers right now because they had sold and he's still working there. And I said, well, Joe, did you get all of the money that you were? Yeah, I got all the money. And I said, okay, then don't worry about it. We talked about this. If your name's not on the building anymore, that was the trade. He goes, yeah. I just, well, why is that? And I was like, man, I wish I could tell you. I don't know. But the nice thing is it always has a crack open. So, Dan, stories, price, objection always seems to be front and center. You got any
Yeah.
interesting?
Well, we talked about books, and Zig Ziglar has some of the best
He does.
pricing objections. I love it. I love it when he talks about how he decided years ago that he would rather apologize about his price one time, apologize for his price one time, than have to apologize for poor service and quality for years. I love that. You remember that part?
Yeah, I do.
But I'll tell you a funny story that talks about price. So I was actually in one of my other offices, my Chicago office, and an attorney called and said, hey, we need this. Come here and give us a price on it. And it was a big project, really quick turnaround time. And so when I walked in, the first thing that he said to me is like, hey, look, the only thing that's important to me is price. I said, great. And back then what we did was we made photocopies, right?
Right.
We'd take their originals and we'd make 1 or 2 or 5 copies of it. And so I said, so only thing's price. And he said, that's right. The only thing that we're worried about
Don't
here is
care about
price.
anything else.
I said, man, I can get you a really good deal then. So what I'll do is I'll deliver this back to you. I can do it for like 2 cents, maybe a penny and a half per page. Thing is when I bring it back, we're going to use white toner. And toner is like the ink on the paper,
Okay.
right? And he goes, "Were you going to use black paper or something?" I said, "No, we're going to use white paper also." And he goes, "Well, how am I going to be able to read it?" I go, "Oh, so price isn't the only thing that's important, is it?" Well, no, I got okay, good. I'm glad you called me then because I'm going to make sure that and so it was hilarious. We ended up getting the project.
Yeah.
And we weren't the cheapest one, but sometimes you can be funny, right?
Yeah,
So,
you can be funny or imposter. And I remember one of my own stories is I remember we were putting the bins out at locations, and it was an environmental thing to fill up these caps and get them off site. And we were getting a lot of success with it, and it made sense to not throw them away and to save the environment. So we sat down with Shell, and they were ready. I mean, the lady was so happy to have this program. It was going to be under the sustainability. Well, then they bring in the hammer, the purchasing guy. And he comes in, and he's like, well, and it was $1,200 a bin that we would put it on their well site, and then they would come, we'd pick it up, and they would empty it, similar to trash servers. But then they were recycled. We give them a report showing how much they recycled and all this stuff. So he comes in and he goes, well, we're Shell. I said, oh, I know. I'm very happy you're here. This is with a lot of other big companies we have. And he goes, well, I just think that maybe since we're the Shell name, there should be a significant discount. Really, you should almost be doing this just for that. And I wasted no time, Dan. And the sales goes, I just started picking my stuff up. I just started putting my stuff away. And the sales guy with me is looking like, what the hell are we doing? I said, man, I am so sorry. And he's like, well, what? I said, there was a misunderstanding here. We don't do this for free at all, of course, but we really don't even discount it. And the plastic lasts 300 years. I went back through everything. I mean, your competitors, Exxon and Chevron and Apache, we're contracted with all of them. But I understand if this is not for you. And I didn't even wait. I mean, I'm get up and walk out. And the lady that was in charge of it chases us to the elevator, which then I knew we're good. Because she says, look, I'm sorry. He's in purchasing. He's supposed to. And I'm like, well, Kimberly, I meant everything I said. I'm not trying to be difficult. And he's just don't take us off the list.
yeah, that's awesome.
And then the next day, and of course, the sales guy, it was great training for him because he was just like, man, that's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. Because they called back next day. It's 1,200, and we've got 12 wells right now we need you to do. And
you know what's really cool, Gary, is that they probably never tried to renegotiate again either.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Because, when we were talking about buying cars earlier, and I don't think I've ever bought a car and felt great about my experience, even today.
Me neither.
Right? Yeah.
Every time I've ever bought one,
I've always felt like maybe I could have gotten a better deal. And the reason why is because they tell you one price, and then you say, well, how about this price? And you meet in the middle, or maybe, but every time I leave, I think, gosh, I kind of feel like maybe I could have gotten a little bit more off. And I think that generally speaking, like, for example, if I go to the grocery store, I'm never going to ask for a discount ever off of a can. Maybe.
I got this green beans. Could you go 39 cents instead of 58?
Can you imagine the checkout line if we tried to negotiate everything in our cart? Yeah. It would be a disaster.
Well, we work there now. We scan it ourselves.
Yeah,
so we're
exactly.
We should get an employee discount.
But imagine doing that, scanning your can of green beans and say, hey, I'm get a manager over here, and they come over and say, what's up? Is there any way I can get this? No, this is the price. So walking away from that one project, although it was probably hard for you and probably even harder for that salesperson, that customer now knows that you weren't trying to rip them off.
It ended up being one of our best ones, Dan, and you're right. It never got renegotiated until we sold the company.
You're right.
They were one of our largest at that price.
Yeah, because you stuck to it. Like, hey, man, if I could have done it for cheaper, I would have told you cheaper.
Well, I even went on to say, because you get cocky as you get more success too. And I was just like, look, I understand you guys drill the wells, and I'm not asking, just like they're not asking you to pump the oil out of the ground for free. And everyone has whatever works for their company.
Yeah.
This doesn't work for our company.
But I think if you're not walking away from at least one or two sales, say a month or a year or whatever your time frame is, then your prices are too low. You need to lose some business to price.
Right. Well, just like doing what I'm doing now, working in the M&A world, it's we don't set a price for a company. The market sets the price, which is wonderful. We have a very dedicated process similar to it, but it's to sell a whole company. But it's made me a terrible real estate seller now because you set the price beforehand. And having watched this work now, seeing companies sold for more than we thought they would, and even in the people buying them, they know the process, but they still get. But like when I sold a beach house I had, it just infuriated me that we had to set this price, and it made me so mad at the salesperson. And I probably shouldn't crucify all real estate people in the same bucket. But I was thinking, because we had sold all the houses on that block had sold, there was no more lots left. So they had the comps in front of me, and I said, "Oh, we want to go way higher than that." And of course, immediately becomes, "Well, and I said, "Well, what price are you adding to the comps for no lots on the street?" He goes, "Well, that's a difficult metric." I said, "I know." I'm kind of like, and we ended up setting it way higher than he wanted, a little less than I wanted. And we had like 10 offers.
That's awesome.
But then I'm mad. I should be happy about that, but I was mad because I was like, well, it just reiterates everything I'm saying. We're putting a cap on something, and it just made the whole process. So it just makes you think there's a process, and no, there's a process for everything.
Yeah. What Warren Buffett that said, talking about stocks, you never want to sell at the highest or buy it.
Well, the one that I always try to live by is, how'd you get rich? Always sold too soon.
Yeah.
Well, that's obviously not true.
Right. Yeah. But I think there is some value in that. And I mean,
it's weird. Like in the stock world, one of the other rules that is conflicting for me is you sell your losers and keep your winners.
Yeah.
But to what point? At what point do you... So
yeah, I don't know.
When to sell is harder than anything, really. Even when you have a gain.
We sold our company, and now it's over $1 billion company. So I definitely sold too early. But
yeah, well, you say that though. But my experience, I had a lot of people tell me the same thing. Dan, I've sold private equity, similar to you, sold a private equity, and gave up almost all the percentage. And then, of course, we blew the company up and sold it significantly more, which was a much smaller. But if I was honest with myself, we would have never grown like that.
Exactly right. That's what I mean.
And you're probably the same way.
No, I know I couldn't have done it. I just joked.
Not even just pure financial. In my case, didn't have enough money to do
that, and the talent.
But in just the mentality. I mean, I never forget. When I finally got it, it was the middle of the boom, and I'm in West Texas, and there's some 1/4 acre facility we needed to get. We needed to get a facility there ASAP. And I called the private equity, which I was on the phone with all the time. And I said, and he goes, well, it's a vast. I said, yeah, it's a 1/4 acre. They want $6,000 a month. I mean, I really think we could do. He goes, is it available? Yeah, well, get it rented, get your ass to North Dakota. And then it started dawning on me going, this is a different.
It's a very small part of the.
And I wouldn't have, my mentality had to be sort of drug along. And the fact that I wasn't guaranteeing anything, that's kind of where I got to. I'm like, I'm not personally guaranteed. I'm going to open one of these on every corner if you guys want. Let's do that.
Yeah.
But honestly, if you think, and I tell owners this now too, listen, because there's this connotation that all private equity is bad. And there are some bad ones and some bad things. But when I tell them, once you've decided to make that step, you've decided. And when they wire you money, it's the same money. It's not. And that's what you have to get your head around more than anything else.
Yeah.
Can't be what if. I mean, you could find a what if story on anything.
Yeah.
So I don't think about that too much.
Wasn't it Zig also that talked about all the lights being green? If you had to wait for every single light to turn green before you went to the grocery store, you'd never leave your house. So I think that's a good analogy.
That's a good analogy.
Because you could sit there and, like I think you said it earlier, paralysis by analysis, but who knows if it's the exact right time.
Well, I always loved his, you get everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want.
Yeah, I love that quote too.
I mean, and that is so true on so many levels all the time.
Yeah.
And that's essentially exactly what you're saying in your sales process.
Absolutely.
You're finding out what they actually truly want because you don't know.
I'm going to be better, right? The service that I'm going to provide is going to be better. Otherwise, don't use me, right? It doesn't make sense to use me if you have something better or cheaper. I mean, cheaper is not always just price, right? It's time and accuracy. And if you get something that's back and it's not right, you have to spend time fixing it. It may not be cheaper. But if you have a better deal than me, don't use me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I know that there's nobody that's going to work harder for you, that's going to care more about it in this whole city than me. So the next time you have a project, would you?
And that starts tugging on all kind of things.
It's actually true too.
You can. Well, that's the other thing you see with good salespeople is you can outwork people. But that's the other thing I always liked about it. I love the black and white of it. Win, lose, instantly results. But I loved you can actually outwork.
I'll outwork,
somebody.
So that you're reminding me of another kind of philosophy just by saying that outworked. So I used to be athletic, but
I remember what was the story you told about it? Maybe I'll make you tell it again. Something on the blue jeans. You you won some race in blue jeans.
I don't remember that one.
I just because when you told it way many years back, I was like, that pretty much sums your attitude up.
Do you remember when Jack told me? So another friend of ours, we were snow skiing.
Yeah, he was on the first podcast here.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
So he's competitive. I'm competitive, and I don't know. Somehow I upset him. I think I beat him at a card game or whatever. Not upset him. He goes, "Well, Dan, I'm going to whip your butt tomorrow on the ski slopes." And I said, "Well, you want to bet?" And he goes, "Yep." And so we made a bet, right?
I remember y'all taking me into the trees where there was no slope.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he said, so our rate.
I think he got us both into there, and I didn't even make the bet.
He told me, okay, so we go up to the top of the hill, and the bet was who could get to the bottom of the hill first. So yeah, it was fun.
That's the other thing about salespeople too. I think the more competitive, you're better at it. Not that it can't be taught, but it's.
Well, he asked me. He goes, "Dan, why are you so convinced that you're going to beat me?" And I said, "Because I know that I'm willing to die for it, and you're not. Like winning to me is more important than living."
Well,
which
I
is
never
stupid,
forget
right?
too. You remember how Jack? This is off kilter, but you remember he was anti-gun. And then we went to JD's or somebody's ranch, and by the end of the trip, he's draped in ammo, shooting everything that moves.
Yeah.
I'm like, I always think of that when I have people that are hardcore one way or the other. I always go, have you shot a gun yet? Or have you done this yet? Then probably ought to do that before you go all in.
Yeah. But that work ethic thing, can you outwork your other people? It reminds me of that. So of training for anything, it was a swim meet, a marathon. So mine was a marathon that I was training for. And I can remember that when it was rainy and cold, I loved it. I loved going out and running in the rain and cold. My wife would say, "What is the deal with that?" And I said, "Because I know that my competition is not
doing it.
running out in the rain and the cold. And so not only am I getting better, I'm getting twice better, right? Because he's going backwards and I'm going forwards." And so that was always my mentality at work and sales also, or even management or anything, is that, like, I don't know if you know this, Gary, but I've never, not one day, called in sick ever. Because my dad, I grew up like no one will know if you're sick if you don't tell anybody. Right. Another funny story about that. My daughter, who's now graduated, married on her own. She's 26 years old. But when she was in kindergarten, I was putting her to bed and reading her a book or whatever. And I walked into her room and I said, "How do you feel?" And she said, "I feel horrible." Because I think she had a sinus infection or something. I said, "Okay, in our household, our family, we don't use that word." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, you can say one of two things. If you don't feel well and someone asks you, 'How do you feel?' you can respond with, 'I feel unbelievable.'" right? Because they could take that as good or bad, right? Just say, I feel unbelievable. Like you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And so she said, okay. I said, well, let's practice that. Well, let's role play it. And she goes, okay. And I said, hey, Meg, how do you feel? And she goes, unbelievably bad. And I go, well, that's not going to work. You can't say the
you
bad
can't
part.
put the adjective in there.
Just say, I feel unbelievable. So we role played it a couple more times. She got it. And I said, she goes, well, what's the second thing? I said, well, the other thing you can do if someone asks you how you feel and you don't feel well and you just want to give them an answer, just say with your fingers. And so the next morning, she's running out to the bus, and my wife and I are sitting there with our coffee, proud of our daughter, first daughter, running. And I go, before she got on the bus, I yelled, I said, hey, Meg, how do you feel? And she turned back, she goes, with my fingers. And my wife looked at me, she goes, we're going to spend some therapy on that, some therapy.
Yeah, and they're going, and she's going to get tagged by the teacher for being a smart aleck because there's an obvious answer.
So, but today, if you called her right now and said, how you doing? She's going to say unbelievable, or she's going to say terrific, or she may say with her fingers, but she's just that mentality.
And there's the mentality of watching you do it too and push. I mean, that outworking is just, it's so real. I remember one of my favorite books was Sam Walton, Walmart. It was a great book. And he talked about, like, he didn't really golf. And I would decline invitations to golf. I got into golf and then got out of it. And then I was like, he said, but what I decided I would do is I would just make 10 calls, which you could have made golfing with that one person. And I adopted that mentality, and actually it worked.
Yeah,
you start,
for sure.
Because you start, it's back to your time management. It's like, I'm not saying don't golf, but I'm just saying there's a difference in what I always preached is activity and accomplishment, two different things. You can be busy. You can fill up a call report. I stopped on 26 calls. Okay. So what? And that's why I found some people liked sales and embraced it and could deal with that. And some people couldn't, because it's black and white. It doesn't really, okay, you made 26 calls. I don't care. What did you sell? And I told my guys, as I started picking them off with the private equity, I said, if you can figure out how to do this from the bar, I really don't care. Whatever works for you. But on Monday, you need to be here. And then we're going to, and now historically, it works better if you're willing to put in the hours. And they ultimately did too.
Yeah.
They were good, but they also put in. But then I've seen it be the other way. I've seen people just couldn't. My first sales job, I left, went to sell insurance, failed miserably, went back to the dealership. But the guy that took my place, he called me and said, I need you to come back because I can't get my head around this. I'm going to the movies when I should be making. He just never could get the discipline.
Yeah.
And I see that.
Oh, I've been there before.
I see that with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's got to have a schedule. I think that goes back to me setting that appointment, even though I don't have an appointment on my calendar. It keeps you on schedule. So
and just do it. If you just
do it.
I'm just going. I'm going. I don't feel like it. There's a real man. And I did do little idiosyncrasies for me. It was like Monday. I always felt was a bad day to go for what we sold. I always felt Friday. I wanted my guys working early. Friday morning all the way till 1 or 2 because people are always talk to you on Friday.
Yeah.
And they usually generally never want to talk to you on Monday.
Yeah, exactly.
So I still hold to that. I mean,
I'll agree with that.
So I would say make Monday your planning and your whatever, and then Tuesday you're hitting it. Friday, I want you to make a bunch of calls because you're going to either in person or ideally even just whatever.
Over the phone, yeah. Set up your appointments for Monday, Tuesday, or whatever.
Because even Friday, you can set up. They're in a good mood. They'll set up Tuesday. Where if you called them Monday, they wouldn't let you see them Tuesday.
Yeah.
I found that a lot.
So I have 4 kids. Just talking about not wanting to do something and having the discipline to do it anyway. I have 4 children, and my youngest is a junior in high school, but every single one of them could, and it's cool now because they even say it, but when they told me that they didn't want to do something, I would always respond like, hey, that's totally cool, but wanting to is not a prerequisite. You don't have to want to do it. You just have to do it. So, yeah.
That's a good lesson to
Yeah,
drill
no,
in.
it's great. Yeah, hey,
It's like, well, you're
it's
not
okay
thinking
if you
about
don't
whether
want
you
to.
don't like it.
Yeah, who
Doesn't really
cares?
matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You do it.
Do it. Go out there and do it. Whether you're doing push-ups, lifting weights, a diet, right? I don't want to be on a diet. No one does. Right? No one does.
Right.
No one wants to eat healthy, I don't think.
Yeah,
But-
not when there's a Sunday there.
yeah. But what people want is they want to be healthy. So you have to, or whatever. If I don't want to lift weights, but I want to be strong. I want to be able to carry grandkids.
Well, they don't
around.
want to pay the price, and that whole pay.
So-
And I think Ziegler has a good one. I'm trying to remember it on the cafeteria line. Something about how you get what you want, and then you pay, which is backwards from the way it really is.
Oh, yeah.
Because you go through the line, oh, I have one of them.
Yeah.
But really, it's pay first.
Yeah.
And then you're not, then pick what you want.
Yeah.
So he has a bunch of, it's funny because I'll listen to the motivational people going forward, and it's all a father of one of the other ones.
Yeah. No, everything that I've gotten, I've read somewhere.
Like you said, it started with Think and Grow Rich 100 years ago.
Exactly. Napoleon
And
Hill.
then you're kind of going, man, it's really the same thing they're saying over here in the latest, greatest, whatever. But it doesn't mean that it's bad, you know.
As long as you're not publishing it, right? So I know I've just seen all these people getting in trouble for plagiarizing, getting fired, losing their jobs. And those are all professors at Ivy League colleges. But like in sales, you can steal someone's idea and use it again, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's repurposing it or whatever. I mean, it's techniques that we've learned from the greatest people ever and just repurposed them.
Over and over and over. And it was so attractive to me because I didn't have the normal formal. I wasn't willing to go to school for, in my case, it probably would have taken 8 years at night. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Or I'm going to try this other. And then you start getting good at it. And you're like, man, this is a quicker route. And everyone does it. That's what's funny. They don't think they do, but they do.
Yep. I agree with that.
Every single damn day you're doing it with your wife, your husband,
Oh, man.
I mean, and then to put these negative connotation, I'll never understand that.
But it's the greatest profession in the world, I think, sales. I mean, it's the
Well,
people
once
are
you
the
learn
happiest.
that, you can do any. It's a platform for everything.
But you're right. Everybody does that. Everybody's a salesperson.
Yes.
If you're a doctor and you don't have a good bedside manager, guess what? You're not going to have any patients.
Or you're not going to be a resident at the hospital you want
Right.
to be. Or you're, pick
Yeah.
a.
So an engineer, they have to be able to have their thoughts be understood by someone else. And so it's all, sales is just, like you said at the very beginning, it's a transfer of emotion. It's just communication.
That's all it is, communicating on a different level, better level.
But the more process you have and the more structure you have around
Yeah,
it.
I honestly say I really, when we met years and years ago, I was the other way.
Right.
And I watched you do this process, and now I know your history well, and now you've been able to tell everyone here about it. It works. It works. And it doesn't, I guess my negative was with it is because, again, of the bad ones. We've gotten the calls, and you can tell the person's reading it. And you're like, how do you... and you're going, dude, just like I got a funny story on that one I'll share. So we used to, in the office, you know how you just banter and do stupid stuff. And so we used to like the cold calls that were terrible. We would just like, who could basically mess with them back the hardest. And so one point we had PCs, Dell PCs, and one of them, the hard drive was bad. So my cohort there, who's a great salesman too, he gets on the phone with them, and they were India or somewhere, and telling them it's the hard drive. It made noise, and it was very... So he's quickly telling them the story, and the guy's like, well, have you plugged it in? He's going through
Oh, gosh.
and he's just reading it, and
Yeah.
it's terrible, and it's so obvious, and so he puts him on hold. He's like, watch this. And he goes, watch this. He goes, well, so you're asking me to get a screwdriver and take the back of this. Well, I can't do that. And he goes, well, why, sir? You know, I was born with no thumbs.
Oh, no.
He tells him, he goes, and you hear the guy,
Oh, no.
because we put it on mute,
Yeah.
and you hear him, and
No
we're just
thumbs.
laughing because I'm going,
He's not gonna have-
there's no
he's not gonna
page.
find that.
There's no.
Poor guy.
And then he comes back on and he says, did you hear me? I did not have thumbs. Or you, Are you being negative? Something? And the guy's just whacked. He's screwed there. He cannot find his script. We're laughing because we're like, there's not a page for no thumbs.
There will be next week. Dell has a process for everything too.
Oh my God, we laughed and we said, okay, that you win. But when it's done, I think it's all back to practice. Sounds like to me.
One of the things that another funny story. I was doing a bunch of phone calls one time, doing some training, and I was in one of those spurts where everybody was being mean to me or hanging up on me or whatever. It was just, I was having a little drought. And so I said, I didn't really think about this, or it just kind of came to me. You got to have fun, what you do. And so I put it on speakerphone. I had someone watching me do it, and the lady answered, and she said, hello. I said, hey, this is Dan. First thing I want to tell you is that my mom loves me. She goes, huh? I said, my mom loves me, and my wife loves me, and my kids love me. She goes, okay. And I said, but the reason I'm calling is I'm the one that's been put.
And she's sitting over there going, what the hell?
Don't be mean to me.
Yeah,
my mom loves me. I know you maybe don't love me right now.
Everyone has a mom, okay?
Yeah. She started laughing so hard. I got the appointment, but it also got me out of my funk, right? So you got to have fun when you're doing this hard work.
Yeah, and be willing to, like you said, fail. And I think that's probably the hardest thing people fight.
Yeah.
Just the rejection. And the rejection is, like I told you, I mean, I was not good at there was not a script to follow. There was not a program. It was, and I don't want to make excuses. I hate excuses. I sucked at it for sure. But it was go to this small town, give the newest guy the crappiest leads that have already been recycled 66 times, and you go tell them to buy this supplemental health insurance, which wasn't even a good policy. It was all, it wasn't percentage. It was schedule of charges. So it was like heart surgery paid this much, and it was just terrible. And then they were so bad at the training. I would come back and the sales manager would belittle you instead of pump you up. Come in and you going, well, it was horrible at it. But I remember the rejection. I just remember and it was the first time I had really failed. Even when you're a cocky son of a bitch, it still beats you up.
My very, very, very first sales call that I ever went on, I sit down with this lady. It's books, right? I'm selling educational books.
First one.
Very first one I sit down with. And I knew my script, right? I knew it.
Yeah, I'm sure you had it memorized.
Word for word. Like I'd practiced it for a week, right? And so, but I was nervous, right? Because this was my first real one. And so,
by yourself or did you?
By myself. Okay. Yeah, I was all by myself. And so I'm sitting on this lady's couch. And the script says, I think there's 3 reasons why I'm doing so well out here this summer. Very first one ever, right? So I said, Mrs. Jones, I think there's probably 3 reasons why I'm doing so well out here this summer. The first is that these books are really easy to use. And then what seemed like maybe an hour probably was closer to like 10 seconds. I just went blank. And I looked at her and I said, but I can't remember the other 2. And she reached over and put her hand on my knee and she goes, is this your first one? I go, yes, ma'am. She goes, I'll take a set. I was like,
nice. Well, that goes back to there's all kind of tugs of emotion too to pull.
Yeah. But it's really more just get out and go do it because the product will sell itself if it's a good product, right? You just have to, and have the humility to screw up.
The humility and try to get into their level. I remember I would try to get the hardest guys because once you got those guys too, what we sold was repetitive. For my own company, it was a repetitive product. Even before that, it was parts and service. So, and I used a similar approach all the time. I'd say, listen, I'm just getting started. Man, give me a chance. I'm not gonna let you down.
I'll work harder.
Give me a chance. Yeah. I'll come put them on. I'll put the caps on. And I did a couple of times. I said, you don't believe they'll work? I'll be here to put them on. First order. We'll screw them on together. And then once you got into those hard, because even the most hardest guys I found, they had been there at some point. They started somewhere. some point they had to go crack a code. And but again, like you said, you had to have the humility to go in there and go, man, I don't know what I'm doing, but give me a shot. I'll work harder. And most people respect that.
Yep.
And you can always do that too. You can outwork people. That was what attracted sales and business. But, that's the wonderful thing about capitalism.
Yeah.
It's why the immigrants kick everybody's ass.
That's right. They work.
Because they come here and they go, wait, what? All I have to do is work 90 hours a week and no one in the government takes all my stuff or no one kills me tonight or I'm in. And they will beat the crap out and it will continue.
Yeah, no, that's true. The work ethic will beat talent.
Well, obviously, Dan, we know all this works. I've witnessed that everyone needs a process. So if someone wants to reach out to you and talk to you about it, what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, probably I would say LinkedIn. LinkedIn would probably be the best. I'm in Houston, Texas, Daniel Lehane.
Okay.
You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions or anything, send me a message.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Dan.